It's an investigative hearing by the Senate Committee on Finance on the remittance of internally generated revenue, fiscal accountability, and the overall state of the country's financial management system.
We also want to find out about the entire revenue generation in Nigeria.
The Accountant General of the Federation proceeded to present a summary of revenues up to September 2024, where general dissatisfaction over the payment system was observed.
September 2024, totaling 2.7 trillion. Then the operating surplus from the GOEs amounting to 2.3 trillion. Then the MDA's IGR up to September amounted to 344 billion.
There are general complaints everywhere that there are delays for payment because payment is now over-centralized.
Our worry is this. This is December. And as we speak, we have met with several agencies. The performance level of the 2024 budget is nothing to write home about. And everybody is that is why the expectation of 2024 budget to announce that is not interesting.
The apparent discrepancies observed by the lawmakers drew further criticisms.
What is delaying the release of the funds? There are two things I want to hear. Is there no funds available? Or there are queries to those things that have been uploaded?
I can say it's combination of all that you have said. Sometimes when the warrants are released, fund may not be in the account, but that is always addressed as early as possible.
Concerns were also raised about low stamp duty revenues as lawmakers attributed the shortfall to poor budget performance.
Total IGR 60.7 million and under stamp duty 3.8 million. Then 2024 as a date, total 93.2 million.
The committee thereafter resolved to summon other critical agencies, including NNPCL and NATI, threatening zero allocation for non-compliant agencies. Separately, lawmakers from the southeast had a closed-door meeting to discuss the tax reform bills. Aside supporting the bills, the senators are calling for wider consultations.
As much as we are not against the bill, that we would also have to do further consultations with our different constituencies and the state governments. We think that the result of those consultations will lead to a better bill being passed and a much more equitable framework.
Now, the next few weeks are undoubtedly crucial in determining whether or not the push for wider consultations can coexist with the urgency for legislative action. Gloria Umezuki, Channels Television News.
All right, so several questions about the performance of the 2024 budget as they try to defend the 2025, which who knows when that will be presented. They're supposed to also get that up and running, but we'll hope to get some at least perspectives on that subject matter with Dr. Vincent Wani, as you may have seen in that welcoming slide, who himself is an economist and investment specialist. So he should be joining us soon, rather than later, I reckon, and then to shed his own perspective on this matter, because there's been several questions as to, do we really get our budget perform optimally? And to what degree can we say it is optimal in terms of release and allocation of those funds in time? And what do we do with it because of the budget cycle that we have now, which is different from what they say we operated before? So those are the issues that we will be going through with him when we do have him on board in just a moment, I reckon. So it's going to be coming up soon, so don't go away. Welcome back. So, Dr. Wani, good morning and thank you for joining us on the program today. So, the lawmakers asking questions of the performance of the 2024 budget. In fact, listening to them, it just painted a bleak picture, albeit they did say they were not impressed with the performance of the 2024 budget, which in itself raises a lot of questions. But let's get your perspective on what they had said. Was this something that you had seen over time or what?
All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, yeah, looking at the 2024-2025 budget proposal submitted by the executive, there are some few highlights. One, the budget number. The total budget is about 49 trillion, which is on a nominal level a big from what we used to have. Last year it was 27 trillion naira. And I was looking at it, the actual value of this. As this current budget, we're going to land at about 26 billion USD. But when you compare this number to what we had in 2023, then I think our total budget was about 23 trillion. The actual value, when you compare that with our exchange rate, as at then was about 65 billion US dollars. So in terms of actual value of the budget, compared to what we used to have 2 years, 3 years ago, the budget we have this year in the nominal value is quite small. How much this will help us achieve our objective as a country remains to be seen. Then the budget proposal in terms of the key numbers, the key consideration, looks a bit optimistic as well. The benchmark for oil production, for instance, is above 2 million barrels per day. I think 2.06 million barrels per day, which is on the high side. Looking at our production over the last 1 year, on the average, it's about 1.5 million per day. So this budget is a bit optimistic at about 25% more optimistic on what we'll be producing. If you keep that aside, you also look at exchange rate, which is the big monster in the house. Exchange rate have been proposed to be around 1,400 naira per dollar. As of today, is 1,630. And the average we've seen over the last few months also suggests that our budget benchmark for exchange rate is on the optimistic side. And we can go on and on and on. You can go on and on and on, and you'll find out that if you compare inflation numbers or inflation target, that's also the same thing. We've targeted far less than what we currently have, or the average we've seen over the last few months. So it is always good that when you plan not by being optimistic. You have to be prudent, which means you are going to choose the worst case scenario. This budget is proposed on the best case scenario, which is one of my first concern. It's one of my first concern, suggesting that the reform we've seen, if over the last 1 year, we've seen the exchange rate grow by about 300%. We've seen inflation grow by about 70-something percent. From the low 20s we saw about this time last year. It means that the gains we've seen from the reforms, especially removal of subsidy in petroleum products, the removal of subsidy in power, that is electricity tariff, and other key fiscal reforms that we've seen the government embarked upon, they are yet to really deliver the expected result, at least in enhancing government revenue. And more worrisome to me is also the fact that I looked at the number of CIT yesterday, that is, I think Q2 CIT, company income tax, and this is a revenue that we also need to depend on. And the drop is about 29% quarter to quarter. 29% quarter to quarter in terms of CIT, which means the receipt from tax, even post tax reform that we are currently going on, also show that the revenue from tax will be a bit soft. You know, so all of this shows that government really need to probably think out of the box, because if we don't do that, our dependence on borrowing will even be stronger in 2025. You know, first quarter 2024, we've seen debt grew by 25%. 2023, our total debt grew by 110%. You know, and at this rate, we may be hitting debt to GDP ratio of 100% by 2030. So, and not only that, our revenue to debt ratio will also be really weighing down on our physical capacity as a country. So all of this really need to be tidied and fixed or addressed in this budget. How that will be done are some details that probably need to be discussed or explained.
Okay, well, I do not know if you saw the analysis that your colleague as well, because he's an economist, Dr. Bismarck Rawani, did for us on the news at 10 yesterday, showing that, you know, there is room, there is reason for us to be optimistic as to what 2025 will bring economically, even though he still says that we have to approach that optimism with caution, and that we also have to find ways for this to trickle down, because from the major indicators, according to him, from what, you know, the federal government has been saying so far, it does appear that there is, the beginning of light at the end of this dark tunnel we found ourselves in. But even at that, I mean, he was still, quite cautious about it. From your own analysis, from what we have seen so far this year, you spoke about how the gains of the removal of subsidies is yet to be felt. However, if you look at some other indicators, for instance, only recently, this December, we saw the Naira begin to rally against the dollar. Do you think that there is any reason to be hopeful for 2025, the budget aside?
All right, thank you for the question. You know, unfortunately, I did not have the privilege to look at my colleague's analysis on the budget. That is Bismarck Rawani at News at 10 yesterday. But having said that, optimism is always very important. Hope. You know, in the absence of hope, you have a very big problem. So at the level as a citizen, as a nationalist, we need to be optimistic. You know, moreover, 2025 is a year that the reforms and the hordes of reforms we've seen in 2024, 2023 is supposed to crystallize for the good of it. So to that extent, I am optimistic. But looking at the data, I'm just saying that if you are planning, you know, and even accountants will tell you that there is a principle in accounting called the prudence principle. You know, you assume the worst when you are planning. You assume the worst when you are planning. That is just what I'm trying to say. That if the average exchange rate over the last 3 or 6 months have been 1,600 per dollar, as of today, it is 1,630. But budgeting or planning at 1,400 is a bit optimistic for me. You know, our major revenue sources, about 70% is still from sale of crude oil. Last year, or over the last 1 year, our average daily production at 1,500. Of course, we've ramped this number up a bit. You know, I was thinking that average is supposed to be what we have to leverage on, instead of just putting our target at 2,060,000 barrels daily. Moreover, we've not really seen so much we have done around fixing the challenges that militate against production of oil in Nigeria, apart from the fact that we now have local refinery that will be picking this crude and refining here. You know, so these are some of the concerns. But for the fact that we have really seen the worst in 2024 and 2023, and as a citizen, as a nationalist, I'm optimistic. Of course, I'm quite optimistic, but I'm just trying to say that the budget, as we have seen, will likely lead us to a stronger deficit budgeting, which will lead to borrowing more. And we've seen that our numbers around revenue to debt payment is on the high side, and we don't want this to continue.
I think I must point out that Mr. Rawane wasn't analyzing the budget. He was doing a year-end review, just how the year has been, projecting into the new year, what 2025 will hold. So it wasn't a budget analysis, so to speak. But I don't know whether you would like to give your own, verdict on how 2024 has been, economically speaking. I know the cost of living has, a lot of people will say they have never felt anything quite like how this cost of living has been. We've seen inflation, at heights that we have not seen before in the history of this country. However, we've also been seeing it begin to taper down somewhat. So some people are wondering whether that tapering down is something that is sustainable. Do you think that we have now put in some things that that are in place for us to begin to see inflation begin to taper down, particularly the major component of it, let's say the most important component as far as a lot of Nigerians are concerned, the food component of it, which we have seen, go up in heights that we haven't seen in a long time.
All right, thank you for the question. The first aspect of the question just it asked me to review the economy in 2024. I'm not going to go around the whole lamentation, how citizens, how businesses felt in 2024. The authorities know, the stakeholders, the players in the economy, business leaders, they know that 2024 is unprecedented. Of course, we've seen inflation at up to 56% in the past. So inflation at 34, 33, we have it now, is not unprecedented, but it is quite high. The citizens and businesses were hit from all directions. The increase of petroleum products, especially fuel, from what it is to what it is now, over 1,000 nationwide. That is about 300% increase on that front. The same thing with exchange rate, from 400, 500 to 1,700 at some point. These are, in fact, some other small channels through which this cost were exacerbated. Even the importation of custom duty at the same rate also increased by over 100%. The cost of clearing a 20 container or 40-foot container, all this, even going to the bank to get our money in cash. We've seen Nigerians paying 2%, for POS to get cash to even do transactions, because you get into a bank ATM or bank house, you're not going to get cash. So you have to pay 2%. If you need 10,000 naira, you need to give 200 naira. And when I was in the Lagos Trade Fair this year, Lagos International Trade Fair, everybody were complaining because you buy something at 500 naira, 5,000 naira, you're going to pay 5,002 or 5,001 because of the POS charges. So Nigerians were beating left and right, and including the businesses. And we've seen that this year alone, about 12 multinationals have either left the country, downsized, or even shut down some of the lines of operation. Over the last 5 years, we've seen about 79 companies also visited Nigerians, and these are countries that have been here for a long time. But like I said before, I believe that we have seen the worst. The minimum is that even if things doesn't improve on the physical or monetary side, the good news is that Nigerians and businesses are now used to the realities. So 2025, we must or may have adjusted to the realities, and it will become normal.
I know you use that advisedly, but nobody wants to get used to this kind of scenario. They want better. But can you connect the dots a little further in terms of the proposals or the 2025 budget itself, and how this is expected to perhaps impact the cost of living positively?
What will impact the cost of living very quickly, like your colleague said, is food. food, supply of food, push food out to the market. And where will this food come from? From the farm. You know, the imported foods will continue to be costly because of the exchange rate situation. But the food have to get out from the farm gate to the market, and from market to people's kitchen and pot and dining tables. Unfortunately, the insecurity or the security situation that continue to drive Nigerians out of their farmland is yet to be seriously addressed. You know, the kidnapping, the whatever type of classes you want to give security issues. So security is a big problem. I'm not sure if that has been fixed. About 25% of farmers did not go back to farm in 2024 during the farming season. You know, and the harvest season is ongoing, started since July or August. We'll soon go back to farm in 2025. So I think that this is a window for government to just say, okay, that the low-hanging fruit is to bring down the cost of living by addressing food. Right. I don't know how they're going to do what they will do to energy. And this energy is about electricity and fuel. We want to see Nigerians being able to address food and cost of energy. These are the two sources of cost of living crisis that we are passing through. But the beginning is just to address the food challenges, and security need to be fixed.
All right, Dr. Vincent Wani, economist and investment specialist, thank you for your perspectives this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we understand that the court has refused to grant former governor of Kogi State, Yaya Bello's bail application. And that's Justice Miriam and any of the Federal High Court refusing to grant that bail application filed by the former governor, saying it was filed prematurely. So remember that he's standing trial along with two others in an alleged 110 billion naira money laundering charge brought against him by the EFCC. So they argued back and forth, and that was that decision. So we're keeping tabs on that one, as you can also see there. So she did actually say that, well, that's actually the defendant's lawyer, Mr. J.B. Daudu, told the court that he had submitted sufficient facts to grant the bail, and he urged the court to exercise its judicial discretion. In fact, let me use the word they used. He urged the court to exercise its discretion judicially and judiciously to grant the bail. But we're following that closely for you, and so we'll give you more information as we get them.
Okay, well, so the justice has ruled. She said the instant application for bail showed that it was filed on the 22nd of November. It showed that it was filed several days after the first defendant was taken into custody. And I think she didn't grant his own bail, that's a former governor, but she granted that of the second defendant, Mr. Umar Oricha, who was granted bail in the sum of 300 million naira. And with two sureties and like some. So, as Chimney did say, we will be following that case for you, and we'll keep you posted as matters unfold in the High Court. So
again, thank you as always for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Have a wonderful day.